Hey there, my name is sjofors, and no, it's a weird name, but it makes perfect sense back in my native Sweden, a place I left many, many years ago, and I've now been 30 years here in the States roughly, and I have spelt out that name many times to many people over the years. I can assure you. Maybe it's easier to remember me as the Price Whisper. The Price Whisper is not something that I invented or anything like that. The story here is that I was called the Price Whisper so many times that I finally decided to adopt the moniker simply, and it certainly makes it easier for you guys, the audience, to find me if you need to. And I have become really a thought leader, maybe the thought leader, when it comes to pricing strategy, and how a company can use its pricing strategy to drive higher sales volume at higher prices, and as a result of that, enjoy superior profits. And profits are good. Pricing strategy that drives higher profits lead to companies that are typically the market leader. And profits, if you really think about it, you need profits in every company. If you don't have profits, eventually you will run out of cash, and you will run out of maybe investor money. And at that point, your company dies. You don't want that to happen, do you? I don't think you want that to happen. I don't want that to happen in my company, to be honest. So pricing for profits is always a good thing. And pricing strategy is if you do it the right way, is what's going to make that happen. And we're going to talk here about different pricing strategies, and I'm talking, you can have very simple pricing strategies, or you can have very elaborate pricing strategies, and I'm reviewing various pricing strategies, and today we're going to talk about a pricing strategy that is about pegging your price to the price of a competitor. Now, that's a very simple pricing strategy. And what I mean with that is that you have a product or you have a service, and you attempt to look up what a competitor are charging for a similar product or a similar service, and then you price the same. There are many problems with this. Many problems. One problem, of course, is that how do you find your competitor's price, right? Well, maybe you can find your competitor's price if they have it on their website. Maybe you can find it if they're selling through a channel like Amazon, and you can simply look it up. But there are oodles of problems here. First of all, the price that is always optimized, the price that always leads to the high sales volume at higher prices, the price that gives you the pricing power you need, is a price that is based on a customer's willingness to pay. And you don't know how your competitors set their prices. Maybe they were just simply guessing. Maybe they were using cost plus, both which are guaranteed ways of leaving money on the table. And you don't want to have a pricing strategy that leaves money on the table, I assume. So first of all, the problem here, you don't know if your competitor's price is even close to the right price, even close to what people are willing to pay. So why would you mimic that, right? The second is that even if you do get their price, you don't know what kind of deals they're making. You don't know how often they change their price. You don't know what bundles they do. You don't know how they bundle product with services with products. You don't know how they bundle different products with each other, different feature set of products, and create bundles. You don't know how they discount, right? Unless in rare cases. So in the end, pegging that price to a competitor's price list is useless. And the other big problem is that if you can't find their prices online in some way, how are you going to find them? Well, I mean, before I was called a price whisperer, and this is one of the reasons I got into what I do, into advising people on pricing, is that it's so flawed. You try to find maybe a competitor's price list, and well, if you sell business to business, sometimes you can find one from a friendly mutual customer, but that's typically maybe an international price list, or it may be the GSA price list, or it may be an incomplete price list, and most likely they're a year or 2 years old. So again, they're completely useless as a reference for you to set your prices, because you don't know what happened since then. You don't know how they changed their prices, how they changed their bundles, right? So why would you want to use that as a basis for your price? But there's more to this, and companies who use a competitor's price list for their pricing strategy often say this, that, oh, we're a little new in the market, so let's price a little lower. Or they say, we have a better feature set, so let's price a little higher. How much? How much lower? How much higher? Well, you guess. So here you have maybe a reference that is a guess, and then it's an old reference, so you don't know actually what actual prices is today, and then you use that as a reference, and then you add that a fluff factor, a little bit higher or a little bit lower, based on a complete guess. And you think that's a good way of pricing? I don't think so. And this is absolutely something that leads to you leaving money on the table. And why would you want to have a pricing strategy that leaves money on the table? I wouldn't want that, and so I don't know why you would. And let's talk about this in another term. Let's say that you do, for whatever reason, find your competitor's price list, and you decide to price, have the same prices. What does that lead to? Well, it leads to commoditization. Because suddenly your customers have a choice of multiple companies where the lowest price is going to win. So and in a commodity price in a commodity marketplace, it is the lowest price that get the business, because you don't differentiate yourself in any way that is meaningful to drive a higher willingness to pay among your customers. You have a commodity product. Now, there's nothing directly wrong with selling commodity products, but it's a business where you will always look for lower prices. You will always look for very tight margins, and it's a very different business than having a business where you have plentiful margins, where you can add unique value to your customers and so forth. So. And it's those differentiators that you elected not to use that gives you pricing power. And you elected not to use them in your pricing strategy because you think that maybe you're going to be pricing the same way as your competitor. And why would you want to do that? Why? I mean, I speak to a lot of companies, executives, and they say, well, we have to be as our competitor. No, you don't. Not at all. You need to find ways to price yourself and differentiate yourself in such a way that it leads to pricing power, to have a pricing strategy that makes you better than the next guy. And let me, in just closing here, tell you a story. Right? You have time for a story? I hope you do. I was at this trade show. It was trade show for golf course maintenance equipment. The little tractors and the mowers and whatever else they use in golf course to maintain the golf course. And the two giants in that market is a company called Toro and another company called Deere. and they were looking really professional. They have big booths. Their salespeople looked very professional, and it was a very, very professional looking display at this trade show. But across the aisle was a company that sold the same kind of products, but they didn't look professional at all. They didn't even have a booth. They had a carpet where their products were displayed. The product didn't look like they came from the same company. They didn't have a brand identity. Their salespeople looked rough. It was like they'd been sleeping in their cars, which they may have done. Oddly enough, the owner of the company was at the booth, and I managed to talk to him eventually. And I asked him, "How do you price?" And he pointed across the aisle to Toro, and he said, "Just like them, but 20% lower." Right? What does that mean? Well, it meant that he decided that he was always going to be in a struggling company. He had decided that coming in with a very low price for similar-ish products, he would always have not enough money for proper marketing, not enough money for proper product development, not enough money to hire the good salespeople. And again, he decided a pricing strategy that would always leave his company to struggle. I would encourage you not to do the same. Instead, look at a pricing strategy that leverage your differentiators, leverage your value that you give to your customers. Create pricing power so you can be the high price market leader in your business. It's your choice. Thank you very much for your time. Come back. I'll do one of these videos every week, and I hope you found this of some interest. Thank you.